and happy Friday. This is Pastor Chris coming back to you again. I hope you have had a pleasant day. It is the end of the week and you are heading into your weekend. Well, each and every week we make sure that we give you a quick primer to get you ready for Sunday morning. We're here at Christ Central and our services are 11 a.m., 19 West Shannon, Spokane, Washington. If you have a church home, please pour into them. Make that place the best it can possibly be. But if you have nowhere to be, we'd love to have you come and visit us right here. Well, we're going to jump right in this afternoon. We have been in the book of 1 Samuel. We've been talking about David and Saul. And last week, we talked a little bit about jealousy and how that can impact your entire life. In fact, it can really twist you up inside. So much so that in today's passage, you're going to see that Saul is actually fairly confused about what the truth of things actually that had just happened. And David is on the run. If you remember last week, David was attacked by Saul. Saul threw a spear and tried to kill him basically because of jealousy, because he was kind of the king in waiting. He'd already been anointed, and that did not sit well with Saul. And so he tried to pin him to the wall with a spear. Well, David's on the run, and he is kind of hiding out, and that brings us to our passage. Now, we are in the 1 Samuel chapter 19, so if you want to follow along, you can at home, or I'll put it on the screen right there. It says this: Now Saul told Jonathan his son and all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, greatly delighted in David. So Jonathan told David and said, Saul, my father, is seeking to put you to death. Now, therefore, please be on guard. And in the morning, and stay secret in a place and hide yourself. I'll go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. If I find out anything, then I'm going to tell you. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, Don't let the king sin against his servant David, since he's not sinned against you, and since his deeds have not been very beneficial to you. Have been very beneficial to you. For he took his life in his hand and struck the Philistine. The Lord brought about great deliverance for all of Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by putting David to death without cause? Verse 6, Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul vowed, As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death. Then Jonathan calls David and told him all of these words. And Jonathan brought Saul to David, and he was in his presence as formerly. Now, this brings us to an interesting point. This week's message is all about friendship. Are you a good friend? Do you have a good friend? And how does that work? There's a couple things I want to point out in this passage. The first of which is that Jonathan finds himself in an interesting position where he's David's friend and he realizes his father is very upset with him. So he does a couple things. One is he tells David this little event that happened a couple days ago isn't going away, so go ahead and stay away from Saul at this point. And I'm going to stand in the gap between you and him. And so he does exactly that. He talks to Saul, kind of talks him off of that ledge. And Saul immediately says, you're right. I'm not going to remove innocent blood. I'm not going to kill this man who really has benefited me and benefited the country. And so I'm not going to pursue taking David out to extend my reign. If you know the rest of the story, this is where Saul is a little delusional, because that's exactly what he does. He attempts to kill David again, and this strife is going to continue. So the second thing that Jonathan does is not only did he warn David and then go and stand in the gap, he then chases David back and he says, I have kind of set this up for you where you can kind of come back into his presence and begin to work alongside the king again, be in the royal court, all of that. And David does that. So my question that I have for you and for is, are we that kind of a friend? Do we get in between our friends and the trouble that they may be getting into, even if our friend doesn't understand it? Are we willing to stand in the gap for them? Now, that does come with a cost, because sometimes our friends don't understand when we say a hard thing to them, or if we try to help and they're not looking for help, perhaps, it can actually cause some stress. The second question I have is, not only are you that friend, but is that friend, do you have that friend in your life that can see those blind spots and step in the gap for you? Because if you are that friend, maybe you don't have that friend. And if you have that friend, maybe you're not being that friend back. And so that is kind of my encouragement and my challenge for you this week, is to ask yourself, are you doing all that you can to be a great friend to those you're friends with? And are you surrounding yourself with people who stand in the gap for you? If you're not sure, then ask God to enlighten you. Pray this week that God will show you how you can be that perfect friend that's going to stand in the gap between the world and your friend, and vice versa. Well, I hope this has been as encouraging to you as it has been to me. If you're wondering, we are going to go a little deeper into this on Sunday. We're actually going to finish the passage and see where it all goes and how this ties into your spirit life, not just your friend-to-friend life. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon, and I will see you this coming Sunday. God bless.